Try something right now. Think of the thing that's been looping in your head lately. The decision you can't land on. The conversation you keep replaying. The worry that surfaces the moment things go quiet. You know the one. Now notice what happens in your body when you bring it to mind. The slight tightening, the low hum of something unresolved, the sense that you should be doing something about it, but you're not sure what. That feeling, right there, is the actual problem, not the thought. The feeling the thought is riding on top of. And in the next few minutes, something is going to shift in how you understand that. Not because this video is going to hand you a breathing exercise or a mindfulness technique you've already tried and found wanting, but because the reason those techniques don't work, not reliably, and not in the moment when you actually need them, is something almost nobody explains clearly. And once you understand it, the 60-second method at the center of this video stops being a trick and starts being something that makes complete neurological sense. Stay with this one. It's worth it. First, why everything you've tried hasn't worked. There's a reason the standard advice about overthinking, journal it out, challenge the thought, take deep breaths, distract yourself, works occasionally in low-stakes moments and fails almost completely when the spiral is at its worst. And the reason is not that the advice is useless, it's that it's aimed at the wrong target. Every conventional technique for managing overthinking is designed to operate on the thought itself, identify the distortion, replace the irrational belief, or write it down and examine it. And all of that requires something that a brain in the middle of an overthinking spiral has in very short supply: the executive capacity to step back from the thought and analyze it calmly. Here's what neuroscience actually shows. When overthinking reaches the point where it feels uncontrollable, when the loop won't stop and the anxiety underneath it is running hot, the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for rational analysis, deliberate thought, and perspective taking, is being actively suppressed by the amygdala. The brain's threat detection system has taken over the controls. And it is not interested in your thought journal. It is interested in the threat. It wants the threat resolved. And until the threat signal quiets, the analytical brain doesn't fully come back online. And this is why trying to think your way out of an overthinking spiral so often makes it worse. You're trying to use the tool that the problem itself has temporarily disabled. If this is explaining something you've felt, but never had words for, the frustration of knowing intellectually that the worry is disproportionate and being completely unable to do anything with that knowledge, hit the like button. Because that gap between knowing and being able to act on what you know is one of the most disorienting features of anxiety. And it has a specific neurological explanation. So, what actually works and why? The pathway out of an overthinking spiral is not through the thought. It's through the nervous system state that the thought is living inside of. When the amygdala is running the show, the body is in a version of threat response. Not necessarily full panic, often something much quieter and more chronic than that. A persistent, low-level activation that keeps the analytical brain just suppressed enough that clear thinking stays slightly out of reach. The loop keeps running because the underlying state that requires the loop hasn't changed. What changes the underlying state is not analysis. It is physiological regulation, sending the nervous system a signal, a credible, biological signal, that the threat has passed, that it is safe to come down from the activation. And when that signal lands, something genuinely shifts. The loop slows, the grip loosens, the prefrontal cortex comes back online, and suddenly, the thought that was completely overwhelming 30 seconds ago becomes something you can actually look at rather than something that's looking at you. Boys, this is the mechanism the 60-second method is built on. Not distraction, not suppression, not positive reframing. Physiological state change. Fast, deliberate, and grounded in how the brain actually works. Save this video. Because what comes next is the specific method and, more importantly, the precise reason each step of it does what it does. And this is the kind of thing that works differently once you understand the why underneath it, rather than just following the steps. The 60-second method. The technique is built around 3 steps. Each one takes approximately 20 seconds. Together, they interrupt the threat cycle at the neurological level and create the conditions for the prefrontal cortex to re-engage. Step 1. A physiological sigh. Not a deep breath, a physiological sigh. The distinction matters. A physiological sigh is a double inhale through the nose, a full breath in, and then a second short, sharp inhale on top of it to fully inflate the lungs, followed by a long, slow exhale through the mouth. 1 is usually enough. 2 is almost always sufficient. Here's why this works at the level of biology rather than belief. The fastest way to activate the parasympathetic nervous system, the branch of the autonomic nervous system responsible for calming the threat response, is through extended exhalation. The exhale triggers the vagus nerve, which signals the heart to slow, which signals the brain that the danger has passed. The double inhale fully inflates the alveoli in the lungs, maximizing the efficiency of the subsequent exhale. This is not a relaxation exercise. It is a direct intervention in a neurological process. Much researchers at Stanford identified this as the single fastest way to reduce physiological arousal. Faster than any other breathing technique, faster than meditation, faster than progressive muscle relaxation. 20 seconds. 1 breath sequence. Step 2. Name what's happening. Out loud if possible, internally if not. Not the content of the thought, not what you're worried about, just the process. I'm in an overthinking spiral. My amygdala is activated. My prefrontal cortex is suppressed. This is a nervous system state, not a crisis. This sounds almost absurdly simple. The neuroscience behind it is not simple at all. Labeling an emotional or physiological state, what researchers call affect labeling, has been shown in multiple studies to measurably reduce activity in the amygdala within seconds of the labeling occurring. Putting words to what is happening in the body creates just enough distance between the experience and the observer of the experience to reduce the intensity of the threat signal. You are not solving the problem. You are simply telling your brain that you see what's happening, and that act of seeing, of naming, shifts something real at the neurological level. Step 3. Give the loop 1 minute, deliberately. Set the timer if you need to. Tell yourself, you have 60 seconds to think about this as hard as you want. Go. This step is the one most people don't expect, and it's the most psychologically sophisticated of the 3. The overthinking loop is, at its core, a response to suppression. The brain is trying to resolve something, and every attempt to stop it thinking about that thing registers as a threat to the resolution process, which intensifies the loop rather than quieting it. By deliberately permitting the thought for a defined, bounded period, you remove the suppression dynamic. The brain no longer needs to fight for access to the thought. It has it. And what most people discover when they do this is that 60 seconds of deliberate overthinking is significantly less overwhelming than 6 hours of involuntary overthinking. And that when the timer ends, stopping is considerably easier than it has ever been when stopping was the goal from the start. 3 steps: 1 breath sequence, 1 act of naming, 1 minute of permission. Now, the entire cycle takes 60 seconds, and it works because it operates on the correct level, the physiological and neurological level, rather than trying to argue the anxious brain out of its own conclusions. The people who find this most useful tend to share it with one specific person. Someone they've watched struggle with this, in the late-night messages, in the decisions that never seem to get made, in the conversations that circle back to the same unresolved thing again and again. If that person came to mind while you were watching this, sending it to them costs nothing and might matter more than you realize. Why the trick is only the beginning. Here's the honest part. The 60-second method works. It works in the moment, reliably, when it's applied correctly. What it doesn't do is address why the overthinking keeps returning. Because the technique quiets the loop. It doesn't change the underlying nervous system sensitivity that generates the loop in the first place. That sensitivity has a history. It developed in a specific context, for specific reasons, at a point in your life when the level of alertness it required made sense. And understanding that history, really understanding it, at the level where it changes how you relate to the pattern, rather than just how you manage it, is a different project. A longer one, but also a more permanent one. There is a video on this channel that goes directly into the deeper roots of chronic overthinking, what the original conditions were that trained the nervous system into this level of vigilance, and what genuine long-term change actually requires. That's the next layer of this. And if the 60-second method worked for you today, following that thread is where the real shift lives. If what we covered today reflects something that has been affecting your daily life in significant ways, your sleep, your relationships, your ability to be present, please don't wait to speak to a mental health professional about it. What we've described today is real, it's well understood, and it responds to the right kind of support. Drop a comment with what happened when you tried the method, or with a specific step that finally made the mechanism click for you. Those responses matter to everyone else watching who has been trying to think their way out of thinking for years and wondering why it never quite worked. Don't forget to subscribe, and as always, thanks for watching.